Reapers 13, Chapter 6, Day. I lived 1,000 lifetimes, and await 1,000 more. This curse and blessing called eternity, like everything else, with a little time became commonplace and standard. There was a time I thought maybe I might grow bored, but that time has passed. To live is to experience, change, and acclimate. That's the greatest secret no one dares tell. The world is out there. We need but grasp it. Life goes on and on and on and on. It slows when we do too much, and it speeds when we do nothing. But it never stops. The sap of life flowed through my veins, and for a brief moment I was one with infinity. I was no longer Dei. I was no longer an avatar. This thing I called self found rest in the simple existence of doing nothing. Peace. Then I opened my eyes. My bedchamber, dimly lit orange by the torchlight orb embedded in the limestone walls, remained quiet despite my entire fortress shifting positions underground. I sat up, pushing my silk blanket aside. "Autumn," I called out. The seams where the limestone bricks met lit up yellow and then drifted into the air as particles, coalescing at a point within the center of the room atop my rug. A figure formed of a man, mid-30s. Wild red hair that fell to his shoulders and robes of gold silk covered his ashen body. A tail curled around his neck and scratched at his chin. "Good morning, Paladin," he said. "How may I be of service?" "Have we arrived at the Nexus?" I asked. "Not yet. We are currently still geo-shifting to the location. Expect another 10 minutes until our arrival." Yet there was silence in the chamber as though stationary. Why can't I hear the process or see the vibrations? Remind me of what I may have forgotten. 2 memory cycles ago, you searched for a way to add a silencer around the structure of the fortress. After your search, I devised a runic inscription to add to the fortress's entirety as per your request. Of course, it was something so simple. I felt stupid for even asking. "Thank you, Autumn. How long before the others arrive?" 52 minutes, approximately." I stood up, naked as a baby. Clothes materialized around me, my brown cloak, baggy black pants, and long-sleeved black shirt. "Might I suggest you add the memory of silence to your permanent collection?" Autumn asked. "It would be easier than removing the memory of noise, as that is entangled in far more memories." "Good suggestion. I'll meet you in the recollection chamber. Prepare that particular piece of the memory." Autumn bowed and returned to being particles, which zipped to the walls and faded away. In the corner of the room, I kept my desk. The console on top flashed a blue pulse in the right corner of the screen. I clicked the pulse, and an audio wave filled the space. I typed "translate" into the keyboard. Someone's voice came crackling through my speakers. A friend. "Jonathan. I need you to take a message to Cassandra. Tell her I can keep her and the church girls safe at my mansion in Thessa, and warn her that the council has ordered her execution." The message ended right there. I faintly remember that murmur of a voice echoing in my head while I approximated sleep. Looking at the history, I received the message about 2 hours ago. That gave me plenty of time to reach the Sea of Dreams, but doing so would interrupt my schedule. Jonathan most likely wanted the message sent within his day, which gave me at least 168 days of dreamland time to reach the sea and find her specific dream, if she was even sleeping. The real challenge, though, was getting there. I walked the copper hallways to the central staircase that circled the inner perimeter of the fortress. It overlooked the base floor where the circular rune lay carved into the ground, the Nexus point. Once I reached the Nexus, the point would light up blue and become functioning. But I still had a little time before that happened. A door marked with the runic inscription for Mind stared back at me across the way. I stood before it. The rune lit up as I placed a hand to the door. I watched the frame dissolve briefly into particles as I stepped through, and then harden once I passed beyond the frame. Books jutted out from the walls, filling a long hallway that ran half a mile. But in order to maintain a proper size for the fortress, it existed in condensed space. To keep my own sanity, I walked about 2 minutes and entered into another chamber, where the ceiling was a large dome, usually used like an observatory. However, while geo-shifting from location to location, The glass became a projector of sorts that displayed images conjured with my mind. The dream deck sat at the center, a reclining leather chair that faced upwards to the ceiling. At the head was a dome-shaped headrest that interacted with my brain. Understanding the magic required to create the device took me several centuries, but thanks to my earlier days in the Dreamlands, it came naturally to me. Autumn appeared next to the dream deck, holding a book in hand. "Have a seat," he said. I relaxed in the seat, allowing it to fully recline. Autumn opened the book, and then he placed a hand to my head, activating the chair. I felt the tendrils emerge from the headrest and plant themselves in my skull. A cool sensation washed over my brain, as though I were lying down on the beach while ocean waves lapped over me. My eyes closed, and body relaxed into a sensation similar to sleep. During REM sleep, the brain resets itself for the next day, and while I could only approximate such a process, I believe I'd done a good enough job. The memories poured into my skull like a dream, flashing in bursts of recollection. Everything made sense now. My venture into the stillness, a place where everything within lost the bounds of time and space, brought me to a cavern. Events in between and before were irrelevant. Autumn knew only to relay the necessary details. I found an ancient book of spells somewhere in a library, forever suspended in time, collapsing in on itself. I scoured the library for months, barely surviving the creatures that took residence in those lands. One of the spells spoke of taking silent steps, which I extrapolated the base formula to silence the fortress. The memory ceased, and I snapped awake. 6 minutes until the others arrive. Shall I prepare evening supper? Yes, I said. Do so. Autumn vanished into the floor. I stood up and headed back to the central stairway, seeing the nexus point at the bottom glowing a bright blue. I could either jump down or simply walk. With 6 minutes to kill, I decided to walk. The bottom landing looked more like a loft than anything else. A large roving picture screen was built into one wall, with a sofa facing it. A kitchen was on the other end of the nexus point, between 2 of the 3 large doorways leading to the other points in the fortress. And at the other section, between the other 2 doorways, was the game area with a pool table and dartboards. 3 clouds of orange energy formed around the area, hardening into people. 2 men and 1 woman. They each wore garb similar to my own, except they added an embellishment to each of their attire. Hassan, the eldest man, somewhere in the mid-20s, wore a feathered headdress from his tribe. Esperanza, a woman in her early 20s, wore her hair in a braid tied by roses. And the last man, Laith, wore a shamag to cover his head. They all approached me on the nexus point. "Good to see you all again," said Esperanza, hugging each of us. We all said some greetings before getting down to business. "What's on the agenda, Paladin?" Hassan asked, his eyes glowing embers of excitement. I looked to them, knowing how my next words would hit them. "There is no adventure this time." All 3 gasped in unison. "Explore the outer realms. Keep mapping the surrounding areas. Look for ether wells. Make your own adventures for now. I have some business to attend to." I tried to walk away down the hallway adjacent to the stairs, but Lay's protest kept me from leaving. "Paladin, you never break your word. Last time you promised you'd let us help you in your battle against Lord Kaladesh." I knew I'd regret making promises to a man of oaths. "You're new here," I heard Esperanza say. "The Paladin lies." I took offense to that, turning harshly on my heel to face them. "When have I lied to you? When have I lied to any of you, for that matter? You've been saying for real-world months that you'd let us help you, yet here we are again, where you send us off on some busy work while you handle whatever you need to handle." "But you are helping me," I told them. "This busy work has brought you in contact with new civilizations and found me many places to expand my network of resources. Without those resources, I cannot continue my battle." "But where were we when you rescued Laith?" Hassan asked. 4 sleep cycles ago, you had us negotiate with the Farai for the herbs, and when we finally returned to the fortress, he was just there with you. Those herbs helped me immensely in creating new runes for extra forms of sight, but I doubted they would care about my research. Rather than talk things through like an adult, I walked off. Time was not particularly of the essence, but I'd still rather use it on something else. "You have your adventure," I called back to them. Even in my ethereal form, arguing stressed my nerves way too much. I needed to get a move on. The arsenal was a door marked with a sword and shield intersecting each other. It opened upon my visiting. Not much was in the chamber save for a few displays holding costumes, and on the walls were weapons. "Paladin," came Esperanza. The trio burst in through the doors. "You can't just ignore us." "I'm not ignoring you," I said. "I gave you something to do, and am now moving on." I stepped to the set of armor at the back of the arsenal, my prized possession. Shapes akin to rocks, and textured as such, connected at the seams to create my masterpiece. It covered my torso and shoulders, holding small designs within its edges for style and runes added in gold lining to give it the appearance of highlights. When activated by ether, the armor shined blue. The gauntlets were their own form of master craftsmanship. While simply covering my forearms, they held 2 runes on the point where my wrists kept tightly snuggled. Combining those runes once created a spectral army to support me, and combining them twice recalled the army. For an added bonus, the entire set of armor barely weighed a pound and protected against even a bullet. The process of forging took a long time to master, but it was time well spent. Going beyond that, to work with material from the Dreamlands took even more time, but the joy of it all kept me going. And now, I had become a legend. That armor made me the Paladin. I called it Koenigito. The weapon, also held by the display model, I forged in a similar process. I used the black steel as my base, then added devil rock from the underworld around the structure, and sealing it with enchanted volcanic ash. The blade looked rocky and smooth. It was shaped like a tree with an extended point at the top. I slipped the armor on and placed the sword to my back. The runes held the blade in place without me needing a sheath. "Paladin," Hassan called, "you took us under your wing. Let us help you." They really weren't going to relent. "Look, you 3, I said. "What I'm about to do is completely unrelated to Lord Kaladesh." Esperanza was taken back. "Exactly. I just need to deliver a message to someone in the waking world. After I finish, I'll return here." "Don't try to sugarcoat your intentions," Lath said. "There's only one way to communicate with the waking world from here." He narrowed his eyes at me. "You intend to evade the mind of someone living. In other words, you intend to go to the Sea of Dreams." Hassan gawked. "Paladin, you can't. Lord Kaladesh keeps the entire border around the rift locked down." I never understood why people felt the need to tell me what I already knew, as though they were saying some revelatory secret. "I'm not going in blindly," I said. With a press to the side of my now empty pedestal, the mannequin separated and folded, allowing a new display to rise from below. What hung in its place was simply a pitch-black coat, a white mask with 2 small eye holes and expressionless lips, a gat, and a pair of gloves. But above all, what hung was my crowning glory, my truest masterpiece. "We want to be part of this adventure, Paladin," said Esperanza. "We've been with you for nearly 4 centuries of Dreamtime. We deserve this." "Like I said, I just need to send a message." "But is it worth risking so much over a little message?" She looked hurt and betrayed. All of them did. Even Lath. I needed to tell them something, but opening up never came in drops. Once you gave them a little, all the secrets began rushing out in a heavy downpour. "I have to send a message to someone the council has targeted. Do you 3 remember what I told you about them?" "Well, yeah." Esperanza hesitated to say more, as though they were watching her now. "They are currently manipulating all the evil in the world. Back home, they even began an invasion into my country." "Mine as well," said Hassan. "My tribe knows not to trust them, but the way you've described them seems unreal." "It's all true," said Lath. "I didn't notice it then, but I've looked around more since we were told. I come from the Choke. Councilman Claudius controls the territory. I saw someone step out of line once and watched over them, afraid for what might happen. In the night, the Yellow Guard came and took her. They moved in so quickly and quietly, I barely saw them as they whisked her away, flying through the sky like ghosts. But when they were above me, I saw a tail peeking from underneath their cloaks. The next day, the person was acting completely different and completely subservient." "What did they do to her?" Esperanza yelped. "She was corrected. It's something that gets said in hushed tones, but most people treat the idea as though it were a conspiracy theory. But I've seen it, or at least, I've seen the end result." "Then that makes you a warrior of 2 worlds," Hassan said to me. "Do you use this realm as a way to command an army in the real world?" I hated that term, real world, as though the Dreamlands were some false reality. Everything around us was still real. There are species of creatures and thinking beings that only exist within the dreamlands. Calling their reality false was denying their very soul. It was like saying their lives held no meaning simply because they exist outside of a comfortable and recognizable space. "This place is my home," I replied, trying to keep a firm but cordial tone. "The Dreamlands is where I've lived most of my life, and will live most of my life. Even were my ethereal form to be destroyed and I'm whisked back to my body, I would die long before I matched the time I spent in this realm." Of course, returning my body meant becoming a vegetable. To live such a bound life trapped within a hollow prison, I couldn't imagine that horror. Were I not a dreamer, I never would have been able to escape that hell. "But you do fight in the real world, don't you?" Hassan pressed. "My body is in the waking world, but I only do this out of respect for a friend. He keeps me safe while I'm in here. It's the least I can do for him." I saw the questions brimming on their faces. When it rains, it pours. And before you ask, he is not fighting the council either, though with this message, it might be seen as a declaration of war. "What of Lord Kaladesh?" Lath asked. "I've heard his name mentioned before. Isn't it true that he's a member of the council?" The other two seemed surprised by this new information. "So you are fighting them?" Esperanza asked, her eyes burning with curiosity. I took the new garb and placed it over my armor. The mask I attached to a belt loop. No sense in wearing an object of fear around my allies. I left the room and began walking down the hallway to reach my command center at the end. Lath repeated his question along the way. "Kaladesh is a member," I admitted, "but he only became my enemy when he declared himself the ruler of the Dreamlands. At that point, I knew my friend, my mentor, was gone. He lost the spark of adventure that brought him to this world in the first place, but I only recognized this once I saw how he had transformed Kadath into his playground for experimentation. On his campaign to assert his dominance, he exterminated the Yane and took all the secrets they cataloged within their kingdom. He also took control of the ports and captured women so that he could rape them and study the process of birth. The list goes on and on for millennia. You've only come in on his latest scheme. Kidnapping dreamers is far from the worst thing he's done." "He's a monster," Hassan murmured. We reached the command center and entered into the moderately sized chamber. A large station with a built-in monitor stood at the center of the room. All around it were different circular pads for different spots in the world where I placed the nexus. I sat at the monitor and pressed a button on the terminal. The screen came to life, pulsing bright blue while it scanned my form. When it finished, the screen showed an assortment of files and programs. I launched the Sentry application and waited for it to load. "Kaladesh needs to die," I said. "But since he holds the crown of Cathalius, he's basically a god in this realm. Slaying him is not so easy. I tried once, but he overpowered me. It was only thanks to this cloak I was able to get away." "The cloak?" Hassan asked. "Is it magical?" "I've only taught them a little about the science of magic, but explaining the intricacies of magical objects would take far too long. Instead, I tried to keep it simple. Objects can only hold a certain amount of ether," I explained. The Sentry app loaded, so I began looking for the right drone. Living beings can hold more ether and are constantly absorbing it into their being. Some beings can use it, and dreamers can do so in extraordinary measures. This cloak requires an inordinate amount of ether to function, which is why I crafted it using a living being. Essentially, I'm wearing a life over my body. I also had to weave it with dream silk and dye it with a plant only found in the underworld in order to keep the flesh alive. Not to mention, after the siege on the Yane, the final survivor on his deathbed told me to skin him and use his body as a weapon against Kaladesh. In the end, I created a cloak capable of holding an approximation of all my fellow Reapers' abilities, but my allies did not need to know all those details. None of them seemed too thrilled by my story. "So you see now that this isn't a game to me," I continued, hoping to drive home this point. "All this time, I've been looking for a way to beat him. I spent thousands upon thousands of years creating the basis of magic and formulae to understand it while keeping him from gaining too much of the power he desperately desires by capturing dreamers. This is a war for me, and I'm losing. In order to keep the Dreamlands a place for an infinite adventure, I need him to be the last vile king. At least, for as long as possible before the next tyrant tries to rise up. Esperanza placed a hand on my shoulder. "We understand," she said. "No, you couldn't understand." As soon as I shouted, I regretted my tone. But how could they possibly conceive the depths of my pain when they were just tourists? "You're just here for the adventure," I snapped. "All any of you care about is escaping your painful reality in exchange for a more colorful one. But to me, this isn't just some playground. Lord Kaladesh isn't just some evil king we need to slaughter so that his world might be saved. He's destroying everything this realm symbolizes. He's turning it into the waking world. And if people can't even escape in their dreams, then where can they go?" I didn't realize, but tears were falling from my face. It had been so long since I had cried that I thought I forgot how. "Don't shut us out," Leif said softly. "We know this isn't just a game. Even if we never knew the full extent, we understood that dreamers, people like us, are dying or being exploited simply because we have a gift." "It's a story that gets told again and again," I murmured. "But we can put a stop to it. We can make sure those dreamers never die for trying to live in a better world." "But they aren't living in a better world," I snapped. "They're escaping their own nightmare of a world. It'd be better if dreamers never came here and instead focused on fighting the council. It would be better for you all as well." Esperanza crossed her arms. "Like you said, Lord Kaladesh belongs to the council. If we defeat him, we hurt the council. And after the Dreamlands are free, I commit myself to helping you in the real world as well." "As do I," said Leif. "And me," added Hassan. I smiled, but I knew how this all ended. "You're not the first to join me," I told them. "Others have been by my side for a time, but they died along the way or were captured by Kaladesh. Or they were painful memories I'd rather keep stored in my mind but never speak of. Fine. You can come along, but I'm telling you, this isn't anything major. I just need to break through the barrier blocking the rift into the dreamlike void. And we can help," Esperanza emphasized again. I relented and waved them to the screen. My drone flew around Elvia, the city nearest the rift of the Sea of Dreams. It looked the same as always, but I was more interested to see if my nexus, the one I placed under the city ages ago, still remained unguarded. After zipping around the buildings and examining the entry point within the sewers, it looked as though Kaladesh hadn't spotted the vine-covered doorway. But once I used it, the spike in ether might alert his guards. It would give us a small window, but we also needed to commandeer a boat and break through the barrier at sea without getting caught. And if I made it to the dreamlike void, searching for the dreams within my magical algorithm could take a while. They'd need to stay hidden until I could emerge. It was a lot of variables, but we had 168 days until the end of this dream cycle. Against all odds, we managed it. I was floating in the dreamlike void 152 days later. I found it amazing how time seemed to cease, the same as when I entered into my dreamlike state in my bedchamber. Within that weightless space, I no longer needed to breathe or needed to see light. Everything emanated its own glow within pure darkness like stars in the night sky. Large human-sized bubbles floated about the space, reflecting images of the dreams within. By my calculations, only a little over 12 hours passed in the waking world. The council would most likely pester Jonathan around noon, so at this time, in the waking world, people should be sleeping. On my left wrist, I clicked a button and a touchscreen appeared. I clicked the app I created for dream searching. Runic inscriptions spiraled around me, forming a bubble of lines and patterns. I floated in that space, legs crossed, being zoomed through the void. It took a few minutes to sift through the hundreds of millions of people dreaming, but it finally brought me to a bubble reflecting paintings in a hallway. I fell into the bubble and found myself emerging from a dark corner of what appeared to be an art gallery. Cassandra stood, staring at a large portrait at the center of the hall. On either side of me were paintings of familiar faces, reapers and councilmen. She glanced my way and stared, not betraying a single emotion, rummaging in her thoughts. I needed to tread carefully. In another person's dream, my connection to ether greatly diminished. The person asleep, however, held more power than even a dreamer within the dreamlands. That person, with barely a thought, could shape all of reality. A revolver formed in her hand. She was always far too comfortable with those. "It's me, Cassandra," I said, only now realizing that my mask was still on. She pointed her gun towards me, undoubtedly ready to shoot me dead. I raised my hand slowly and took off my mask and got. "It's me," I repeated. "Daniel," she murmured, my Yoran name. "Have you come to kill me in my sleep?" she asked. Were it so easy, Lord Kaladesh would have done so already. "I came to deliver a message," I said, "from Jonathan." At that, her gun fell to the floor and dissipated. A faint glint showed in her eyes, but it vanished just as quickly. "How is he?" she asked. "Safe enough," I said, though I had no idea how Jonathan was faring. "He wants you to head to Thessa and take refuge in his mansion. The council ordered our fellow Reapers to execute you." "I know," she said. "Elizabeth tried to off me a few hours ago." Ah, that name brought back memories. Elizabeth was Ira's Yoran name. "If Jonathan sent you to warn me, that at least tells me 2 of you are allies. Though, I can't head for Thessa. It's out of the way." So there was a goal in mind. "Where are you headed? There's nowhere the council can't find you." "The Temple of Mard," she said. "Even they cannot breach those sacred grounds." "You're going back to where it all started, then?" I asked. "No. I'm going back to where it all ended." She looked back to the large portrait decorating the lonely hall. I stepped to her side, seeing it for the first time. It was a portrait one might hang in the family room of one's home. A father sat on a chair by the fireplace, poring over his papers. His children, a daughter and son on the ground, played with toys. It was a portrait of Councilman Cameron Veritas and his adopted children, Cassandra and Jonathan. "Cameron said the painter failed to capture my likeness," she remarked. "You were never the type to play with toys." She smirked. "He wanted me reading a book, but the painter said reading was unbecoming of a proper lady. He has serious guts to argue with the councilman." We had a small chuckle at that, before Cassandra turned away and stepped into the display room behind us. Memories lay locked away behind shattered glass. On one pedestal stood a tiny house like a dollhouse on fire. The nameplate read, "Memories of Ash, 1830 MY. On this night, a girl became a murderer." "This is where it all began," she said, as though in a trance, while she slowly walked to the other end of the room. "It all began with a stupid book." I walked to another pedestal in the room, holding the grimoire of Isaias. The description read, "A young man found this book and tried to understand its secrets. In those secrets he found a truth. In that truth he found a solution to all of humanity." I already didn't want to see more of her twisted fantasy. This place would slowly become a nightmare if I didn't pull her away from these dark thoughts. "Cassandra," I said, chasing after her. She stood before another painting, this time of Councilman Veritas, pointing over her shoulder while she knelt down aiming a rifle. "I thought he was a good man. I believed in him and trusted him. But he just used me like a tool, the same way Bauer used Nicholas. Even flesh and blood can't be trusted." "Cassandra!" I snapped. That seemed to break her focus. "Do you have a plan? Once you get to the Temple of Mard, do you have a plan?" I needed to keep her focused and engaged. She looked at me, cold eyes, completely broken free from her downward spiral. "I wish I did," she said. "Reese wants to go for some reason she's not saying. I think she found the last idol and is trying to find something in the temple to keep it safe." "She closed the great gate?" Cassandra nodded. "This is unbelievable. I'm running out of time," I said. "What do you mean?" "Kaladesh is on this side. If I can kill him and take the crown, then it'll keep the waking world safe." She shook her head. "But for how long? Everyone knows that they can just go through Leng to enter into the Dreamlands. If Kaladesh is dead, his children will come after you. Worse, the other councilmen will come after you. I can only surmise that they keep away simply because Kaladesh commands it." "I'll be fine," I said. "I've been hiding for millennia. If I get the crown, I'll hide it where no one will ever find it before they have time to kill my physical body. In the meantime, I think I need to visit the dreams of the other Reapers. I'll try to determine the allies from the enemies." She shook her head again. "Don't waste your time. You and Jonathan are my allies. Samuel, Felicia, and Benjamin are potential allies or neutral. The rest are enemies. Before you mention Theo, you should note that he already tried to kill me. Sounds like you have it all figured out then, I sighed. Lucy still couldn't hold a grudge after all this time, could she? She could, and she does. Thanks for stopping by, Daniel. It means a lot to me. Be careful, Cassandra. I know you think you're doing the right thing by helping Reese, but she may be a liability. If the time comes where she could cause the death of both of you, take her idol and run. Cassandra seemed livid by the mere suggestion. I won't leave her to die. She needs to survive this, not me. If that situation ever comes up, it will be me sacrificing myself so that this world's last hope might survive. Heroes don't win wars, Cassandra. You die, and then your story and legacy die with you, because no one will pick up that torch when you're gone. Have you even tried to build a resistance since you left? Have you even tried to inspire others to become a hero like you? Because when everyone's a hero, there's no easy target. Have you? She asked back. We're not talking about me. Though the truth of the matter was that I had tried again and again, each time met with failure. But they didn't have to be failures. I learned and tried again. You've been wallowing in your own misery. That's the answer, isn't it? No, she spoke softly. I lost myself along the way. And when I finally found myself again, the world had changed. Is that what you wanted to hear? After I so triumphantly stood against the council, the only thing I did with that rush was to become a deranged lunatic that needed to be restrained, controlled, and caged away like a common beast. Is that what you wanted to hear? I had far overstepped my boundaries, and I realized how distant we had become. The rift that time created had become a valley. She was no longer a family, but a friend long lost to my memory. I'm sorry, Cassandra, I said. I tried to reach out to her, close the rift, but all this time there was anger I never saw. Never lose the light that guides you. And if you think Reese is that light, then keep her safe. Goodbye, Daniel, she said. Tell Jonathan, this is my third bloom. I didn't know what she meant by it, but maybe it was some code they shared. And tell him I'm sorry. Suddenly, I felt the urge to speak up. You really should go to Thessa, I said. You don't have to do this alone. She looked puzzled by my words. Believe it or not, I have tried to inspire people. At first, I tried to fight Kaladesh alone and was only met with endless failure. Then I got wise. I've rallied armies, grew civilizations, watched dear friends die countless times and so much more, but I never give up. To do nothing would be worse than to fail. My friends give me a hand when I need it and allow me to grow stronger each time I fall. With enough time, I can win. I believe the same for you. If you've been doing everything alone this whole time, try something new. She was quiet. I don't know if my words even reached her, but I felt the dream growing weaker and knew my time with her would soon be at an end. I floated out of the dream. Jonathan would be my next destination.